Directing your attention to the top right of the screen, click on Garage. The only thing I changed was the steering ratio. I changed it to 14:1 because the 12:1 was a little too twitchy, which made it difficult to be smooth with the wheel, which is really important here. So since our lap is on lap 1, it really starts on pit road. So we're going to accelerate, making sure we don't get a speeding penalty. And then we're going to bring it into second. So right now we're in second. And I'm able to go full throttle as long as I stay on this part of the track, the apron. As long as I stay within this seam in the actual track on the apron, I can go full throttle for a while. Into third. And now that I'm in third, I start lifting. If I don't lift, the rears will kind of spin, and that will cause me to correct, and I don't want to cook up the rears too early. So I'm just taking it I'm using as much throttle as I can without the rear spinning. You see me kind of miss the throttle a lot. The road is pretty tricky here. Now that I start to see the exit, I'm going to turn down just slightly. Just before I start to see the exit. There's the exit. And now my goal is to increase the throttle once I can get the car straight. And you want to increase the throttle because you need to go as fast as possible to go in the start finish line. And right here is when I hit full throttle. And I will not let go of full throttle until my lap is over. So it's really important to try to get to the throttle really early. That's why I turn really early back here. So I can be straight. You can now that you turned, you can go across the steam and get on the second lane of the apron. Just slightly, don't get on it too much. That'll help your car get turned and pointed straight, so you can get on throttle sooner. So I'm on throttle just before the pit road exit, and I'm making sure I don't cross the white line before I cross the blue line. So if I cross the white line, I'm going to get a penalty, so cross the blue line before you cross the white line. And into 3, full throttle in 4th gear. Now I'm going to run the top, stay above the seam. Enter high, stay high. It's a little too far rewinded. There we go. Enter high, stay high, above the seam. Now that I'm past the Toyota sign, still full throttle, I'm going to turn down just slightly. Past the Toyota sign, I'm going to turn down just slightly. You can kind of see where my A-pillar is compared to the seam. So my A-pillar is pretty far off the seam right now, but as I turn down, it's a lot closer to the seam. And I'm turning down so I can get a straight exit. I don't want to have to use a lot of wheel on exit, because the more wheel I use, the more speed I rub off, and I'm trying to have as much speed as possible before when I come to my lap. I'm going to turn down, try to keep the wheel straight on exit, get as close to this wall as possible without hitting it. Right up next to that wall. I'm going to try to keep the wheel straight through the tri-oval. And I like to set up my A-pillar right on this dashed line. That way I can apex at this tri-oval apron. You apex here. Now we can drive it right out to the wall. And drive it really straight. I'm trying to drive it really straight. You can clip that grass there like I did. I didn't necessarily mean to, but I just meant to get my tires as close as possible to that white line. It won't slow you down much though by clipping that grass. Now that we're out by the wall, we're going to start turning in. So we're out by the wall and I immediately start turning in. Now you notice I barely move my wheel to turn in. Barely move it. And I move it really early, right? Right here I'm moving it to turn in. So full throttle, you're going to stay full throttle for this whole track. It's all about the angles and the steering angle. The angles of your car and the angle of the steering wheel. Now I'm not going to drive it right to the white line. When I enter, I'm going to drive it a lane up. So I'm entering for a line right about here. Keeping the wheel straight as I enter. As I enter the corner, the wheel's still straight. Now that I'm here, I'm going to turn down. Now that I'm here, I'm going to turn down onto that white line. If I were to just drive it normally, I would normally drive it to the white line on entry. Like this, I would drive it to the white line here. But instead, I'm driving it a lane from the white line and then turning down. You'll notice it'll be the same case in 3 and 4. The reason for this is because if I were to drive it straight to that white line, the car would get loose in the rears and I would have to correct. And when I correct, I lose so much speed. So I'm trying to maintain as much speed as possible throughout the corner because you're going full throttle. So the only way you can gain speed is by your steering angle and how smooth you are and your angle of the car. Now that I'm a lane down, I'm going to turn down to the white line, get right on that white line, and I'm trying to keep the wheel as steady as possible. Now that I've turned down, I'm trying to keep the wheel there. I don't want to move the wheel at all. The more I move the wheel, the more speed I'm scrubbing off the car. I'm just trying to keep the car on the white line without moving the wheel. So I do move it slightly, but I'm trying to reduce that as much as possible. Now that I'm trying to shape out my exit, I start unwinding the wheel. Just slightly unwind it, very slowly. Drive it all the way out to the wall. As close to the wall as possible. As close to that wall as possible. You don't want to hit it, but you want to be really close to it. The closer you get, the less wheel you have to use to turn the car. Now here, one thing I noticed is that it is very important that you do not correct your car. If you are feeling that your car is going to spin out, just let it spin out. It's a time attack. You can crash as many times as you want, it doesn't matter. You can see in the chat all the times that I have crashed. Most of it was on purpose, but a lot of these crashes are okay. They don't affect you at all. So if you do correct here, you will scrub off your speed, and you do not want to do that. So if it either make the exit or die trying. You're just trying to keep the wheel as smooth as possible. Smooth inputs. Really smooth inputs. Into 3, it's the same idea. We're going to point our car, but not point it down to the apron. We're going to point it down to this lane before the apron. Entering high. We're not going to go out super wide. If we went out super wide, we'd be on this top seam here, but going on the top seam really ruins your turn in. So just aim for just above this white dash. As you turn in, point it down to this bottom lane, to the second to bottom lane there. And now that you're down there, that's when you start increasing your wheel input. See, I'm down, just about down there, and I start increasing my wheel input to drive it down to the white line. If you don't increase your wheel input, it will get really tight and you won't reach that white line. You need to reach that white line for the car to be able to turn well. Now that I have my lefts on the white line, I'm going to try to freeze the wheel there. I do not want the wheel to move at all. The more I move the wheel, the more the car is going to want to slow down and try to correct itself. Just let the car drive itself. So I do have to move it slightly, but I'm trying to keep it as still as possible. Especially when you're on the white line, try to keep it as still as possible. And when I shape out my exit, I'm not going all the way to the wall. I'm going to shape out my exit, I'm not going all the way to the wall. I'm only driving about to this seam here. The seam just before that wall. if I were to drive it out to the wall, that would really make me lose speed and time because I would have to use more track, travel longer distance. And I can preserve, you don't have to preserve a lot of speed for the straightaway because the straightaway is only half the distance as the backstretch was. So I'm not going to go all the way out to the wall, I'm just going to go out to the seam here. Again, trying to be still on the wheel as you don't mind it. Try to be smooth. Do not correct it. Just like turn 2 exit. If you correct it, you will slow down a lot. Do not try to correct this wheel. If you spin out or you push, then that happens. Just try again with the next lap. Now we're gonna run it right to this white apron line. Just save as much time as possible. Right to that line. And cross the line, and I ran a 31.02, which at the moment should be P1.